Hello everyone, I'm Heather and I'm here to discuss the Booktube Prize Round 1. So you are probably watching this beginning of April, I think. Round 1 runs to the end of March and there's a bit of a gag on it, like we're not allowed to talk about our books until then so as not to influence other readers or whatever, which is fair. So for me, actually, at this minute, it is the beginning of February and I've just been given my book assignment, you know, like the ones I'm supposed to read. I got NONFICTION Group B. So I've decided I'm just like, every time I finish a book, I'm going to chat about it straight away because I'm going to lose, you know, my thoughts. And also, I'm not allowed to put reviews or anything online, like Goodreads or whatever. So like Goodreads and stuff is normally how I jog my memory about how I felt about a book. So if I can't put it anywhere, I might as well just put it here straight away. So the books that I've been given, like when I signed up for the Booktube Prize, my very first year doing it, right? And I was like, okay, might as well give it a try. Sounds a bit fun, you know? And it's completely up to the stars, completely up to fate to give me the books, you know. Might give me great books, might give me terrible books, whatever. It's a risk, it's exhilarating. And I did actually get super shit books. Like, I mean, this is early February, Heather talking. Like, maybe end of March, Heather will feel completely differently. But at the moment, the books that I've been given are all 6 of them books I either never would have touched or books I would have touched and looked at the back and gone, no, not for me. So I'm going in a bit pessimistically, which is a dangerous way to go in. First of all, and I need to set myself up in a different mindset, like if this is going to be a successful experiment. So the books are, right, 1,000 Years of Joys and Sorrows by Weiwei, These Precious Days by Patchett, Smile, The Story of a Face by Ruhl, Nuclear Folly, History of the Cuban Missile Crisis by Serhii Plokhy, Islands of Abandonment, Life in the Post-Human Landscape by Flyn, and Everybody, A Book About Freedom by Olivia Laing. Okay, so I feel like the only book in that list that I would pick up and think, oh, maybe, you know, and then potentially read and enjoy is the Islands of Abandonment one by Flyn. I like this idea of like spaces that have been left, you know, like taken over again by nature and stuff through like, you know, strange dystopian circumstances. Anyway, I love shit like that. So I'm hoping that this one's going to be good. So I'm going to start with this one, just to give myself a leg up into the project. And then once I finish it, I'll let you know, and then I'll move on to the next one. And then hopefully they're good. I just hope they're good. Dear God, please let them be good. Okay, success. I have finished one down, 5 to go. Ugh. And I fully enjoyed it, okay? It was Islands of Abandonment by Flyn, and I'm gonna give this one a respectable 4 stars, I think. I knocked it down a star because I found the sort of specifics of the nature bits a bit boring. But I think that's just me, to be honest. I need to stop thinking that I can turn into this person who loves like nature books and stuff, because loads of people I watch on Booktube, they absolutely love these books, and the way they talk about them, such enthusiasm and joy, I just really want to be into that. But then I get to those parts in books and I just, like, I can't keep my interest, you know. I just need to accept that as a person I'm more interested in people, you know, like personalities, societies, civilizations, like histories of people and blah blah blah, and sort of specifics of plants and animals and stuff I'm not into. But loads of people are, so if you're for that, this one's for you. It's basically, the book overall is about nature taking places back from humans after humans have abandoned it due to like war or poverty or things like that. And those specific places, those places where they're like frozen in time because of like a quick abandonment, I love those places. Like she talked about Nicosia in Cyprus, when Turkey invaded, I think in the 70s, and forced people to flee from those areas, and now they're like still as a sort of buffer zone between the Turkish north and the Greek south. You can like go in there and see, like, I mean, you can't, it's not like open to the public, but people have gone in, and like there's still dinner set for that day, you know, everything is completely as it was left, but it's being slowly taken over by like green belt things, you know, like plants and animals that haven't been seen in that area in other places for years and years, you know. Same with like the buffer zone between North and South Korea, you know, and they talked a bit, like, I didn't know this and it was super interesting, about the buffer zone between East and West Germany. So obviously, you know, there was this line between the two, sort of cut straight through the country from one end to the other, and it became this like nature preserve where animals were able to sort of like travel across the country in this sort of like safe area with all these sort of new plants and animals sort of like coming back. And then when Germany reunified, all these sort of naturalists and scientists got together and they were like, okay, like, this is great, you know, reunification, yay, but fuck, now we're gonna like have to break up our like nature reserve. And they like worked really quickly to create this like green belt, like an actual reserve where they protected that bit, all the sort of like natural stuff going on in there. And it's just really interesting, all these different things. Like, she also talked about one that I've not heard of before, Swona Island in Scotland, where it was so remote, life was so hard there, that finally in the 70s the last of the people just abandoned it. They moved to nearby islands, or they moved to the mainland, and they just basically released their cattle, and they were like, Godspeed, Mr. Cow, sir, and then left the island. And it's really interesting because she's sort of like walking around in there and she sees the cattle, who are now wild, you know, they're the descendants of these cattle, and like they just sort of die and then are left there like rotting. You can just see like, she was sort of talking about how it's their society, like the cow society on the island, is more like an elephant society now, where they have like a leader and they like mourn the members of their group that die and stuff like that. I don't know, it's super interesting. Like, I think I'm going to Google more of that. I'm going to go through so many different like Wikipedia rabbit holes to do with this. Also, she said something super interesting about how New England is one of the most wooded, or like most heavily wooded like regions in America. And I thought, that can't be true, that's crap. Like, I'm from Washington State, I'm from like a ridiculously heavily wooded area of America. Like, there's no way that New England, that was settled first of all and has been sort of actively like settled by white European people since the 1600s, like there's no way it can be more wooded. And she was saying, even though it was hit with farmland really hard stripped away, people were started abandoning farmland to move less, blah, 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 abandoning their farms. And then the forests took it back over. And now you've got things like, you know, the Maine woods, you know, that are so heavily wooded, but it's like reclaimed woodland, you know, like the woods has taken it back. And she was saying something like, I can't remember the actual figure, but she said something like 3/4 of forests in the world are reclaimed forest, you know, like it used to be forest and then it was like farmland or whatever, and then is forest again. So that's nuts. I'm gonna have to look that up. Like, I couldn't find like specifics to verify that, you know, online, as I just was like doing it quickly, but I'm gonna look. I've like written down stuff that I'm gonna look up now. Anyway, I fully enjoyed that. I thought with the audiobook, first of all, that her voice was going to grate on me, which is a terrible thing to think about a person. But it's read by the author, I'm pretty sure, and the way she reads it is very like quite like monotony, you know, but like a sad, serious monotone. You know, like I don't know if I would be able to say it like this. She says facts in this way, very slowly. And like, even when I sped it up, it just was like hard to listen to. So I think if I was able to find this book in physical form, it would have been more enjoyable for me to read it. But anyway, it's over. Fully satisfied with that. 4 stars. Okay, I'm now moving on to Everybody by Olivia Laing. Says it's a book about freedom, but I still don't know what the fuck that means. I think it's essays, drawing on her own experiences in protest and alternative medicine and traveling from Weimar, Berlin to the prisons of McCarthy-era America. She grapples with some of the most significant and complicated figures of the past century. Like, I have previously DNF'd a book by Olivia Laing. It's called The Lonely City, or Lonely in the City, or something like this. And I DNF'd it because it just wasn't for me. Like, I found it damn boring. So when I read it as part of a book club, and 2 other people in the book club absolutely loved it. It was like one of their favorites for the year. So it's obviously just like a me thing, you know, like it's one of these things where she's not a bad author, she's just very niche, you know, and either she's your sort of person or she's not. I think unfortunately Olivia Laing is not for me. But this is the one that I have to move on to next because it's the only other one that's come from the library. It's the only other book of the 6 that I have access to at the minute. So everybody, it's quite thick though as well. How many pages is this? Oh, y'all, it's like 400 pages. Okay, well, maybe it will be good. You know, maybe I don't know, maybe there will be like wordsmithing in it, which I just love. You know, like maybe the subject matter isn't exciting for me, but her turns of phrase and things will be things I can write down and be like, oh, I love the sound of that sentence, which is something I do like to do. I'll let you know. Okay. I have just finished Everybody, A Book About Freedom by Olivia Laing. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I did not enjoy it. It was like forcing myself to do homework. This is my hobby. I read for fun because I work full time and I have things to do, people to see, a kid to raise. Like, anyway, I didn't enjoy it. I wouldn't say it's a bad book, okay? It's got rave reviews. I went in, did a bit of dabbling, looking for people who, liked it or didn't like it or whatever. And people have absolutely rave things to say about it. And what they said about it is true of it, but their reviews of it express like a deep interest in the subject already. Like, it obviously speaks to them on some level already. And they're, overjoyed by that. And they're like, adding what she said to their own thoughts on this and sort of making a soup of joyful thoughts. I did not have that experience. I found it to be super boring. However, I'll tell you, there's some aspects of it that, I would normally have liked if it were presented in a different way. Anyway, okay, so the book itself, it's about this idea generally that like our emotions and our like energies and our traumas and everything sort of build up in our body to make us ill, or healthy, or whatever. And she's sort of like running with this guy, Wilhelm Reich, who's a nutcase and like a homophobe and super dodgy, and built himself a box and just sat in the box for ages to like restore his to purge himself of these energies or whatever. Like, I don't get it. Anyway, it starts with this guy, okay, and his theories of like trapped energies in the body, like repressed emotions and like repressed sexual feeling and urges and energies, what he calls orgone, trapped in the body, causes you to be unwell, like causes cancer, causes like all these sorts of things. And she sort of tells this she sort of talks about this exploration through her own experiences, and through experiences of like Malcolm X and Marquis de Sade and, like Susan Sontag and people who've sort of written about this sort of thing, which was interesting, a bit. It was interesting to sort of hear about their various ratings on this sort of thing. But in the end, like her life and her memoirs and like how many political protests she's put her body into and stuff like that, like I just wasn't interested. It was not gripping me. Like, something I do find interesting is like the concept of bodily freedom in relation to sort of political philosophy, and she does say something like my freedom makes you more unfree if it does not acknowledge your freedom. Like, things like that, like, would normally speak to me, I did a politics degree and I did quite like political philosophy, and I do like to think about those sort of things and sort of like explore those ideas. But in relation to like her own experiences, I don't know, pursuing this idea of orgone or whatever, like, it just wasn't interesting. And anyway, I'm done. Moving on now. I'm not in a good mindset about this project, but I'm pushing forward. I've decided that the least of the hideousness is probably going to be Anne Patchett, you know. Maybe it's going to be a bit boring, but at least it won't be like, you know, homework in that way that one just was. So I'm moving on to the Anne Patchett one, whatever the hell that one is. I have it from the library in audiobook form on my audiobook app. So audiobooking it is. I hope the voice is good and the narrator is good because it's all I've got. Onward! Okay, so I haven't finished anything new yet, but I thought I would just take a moment and say that I've watched a couple of YouTube videos about the Booktube Prize. One being Doris, she sort of like did her Booktube Prize reaction to the long list, and like a couple other people, and I'm feeling better about it. I think I absorb people's emotions. Like I think I'm that kind of person. And like Doris, like particularly, is just like really excited about the list, you know. She's sort of saying the ones she was shocked to see them there, and she's like so proud that they're on there, and like you know, excited to get to them. They're not assigned to her, but she's gonna read them anyway because she's just super excited that they're on the list and she wants to get to them. I'm like, I think it's like gone to me. It's like a contagious sort of feeling. Everyone's sort of like really excited about the list, and I think in the end, like, the list isn't the ones that I got, you know. The list is loads of them, and loads of the ones that I voted for originally are in the groups eventually, you know, in other groups, not mine. And the group that I have, loads of people did vote for those, you know, which is how they got there. Like, people were so excited about them and felt so good about them that they put them through to the next round. And like I'm feeling that now. I'm like feeling this sense of like community and like, you know, reading everyone's favorite books and just like, you know, exploring this year's books together and going forward. And like, I'm just like, also I've given Anne Patchett's book a good start, you know. I'm a good way through it now, and it isn't terrible. Like, you know, it's not bad. Like, I think, so Anne Patchett reads it herself, I'm pretty sure, and she's quite likable, I think, you know. So her Dutch House that I read, I didn't really like. I thought it was a bit sort of boring, and I DNF'd another one of hers ages ago, just sort of like giving it a try and being like, no, it's not for me. But her, like, as a person, like talking about her life, you know, and like just putting her humor and her sort of personality into it, I think I'm actually really enjoying it. So I was in a dark place yesterday talking about Olivia Laing's book, but I think I'm feeling better about Booktube Prize. I'm ready to go forward. Also, I had a look at, Doris was on about the Weiwei book as well, and I've had another look at it, and I've like looked at it from a different perspective, and actually I think it might really be good. Like, Weiwei is a really interesting sort of guy, and he talks about his life. I think he has probably a really interesting life. So yeah, I'm in a way better mood. I might have, like, you know, a liquid lunch, a bit of a winesies for lunch break. I don't know. I'm feeling crazy. Okay, I have finished Anne Patchett's These Precious Days, and I liked it. It wasn't bad. Like, I'm gonna give that a respectable 3 stars. And like, it was sort of sorely needed for morale, to be honest, because I'm not sure I could have like handled, like, I couldn't have coped with another book that I just was not into. I think overall, this still wasn't really a book for me. Like, it's not one I would have picked up, and even if I had picked it up for some reason and then read it, I probably would have like gotten bored and like not really carried on with it, to be honest. But not because it's bad, just because, you know, it's not really my thing. The things I sort of loved about it was, so it's Anne Patchett, right? And she's sort of saying, like, she normally writes novels and stuff, and the pandemic really hit her hard in her novel writing. She's like, she sort of froze and like couldn't do noveling, so she sort of went to essays instead, and she was having more success, and she was like getting it out, and it was cathartic and blah blah. So this is basically her collection of essays that she wrote in the pandemic, you know, which is, you know, I think she's quite like a likable, sort of genuine person, you know. She sort of like puts herself out there, and she seems like she'd be just really nice, you know, to have as a friend. And I did the audiobook, and she reads the audiobook herself, like, I'm pretty sure. And I don't know, she just seems really nice, and she's like, you know, funny and like in some ways sort of relatable and some stuff. So she was saying about her no buy year. She did like a year of like not buying anything new. And I've been sort of like on roughly that mindset recently, to do with my sort of New Year's resolutions for this year. Like, not completely, but sort of in that mindset. And some of the things she was saying sort of spoke to me. Like, she was saying the rules for her no buy year were supposed to, like, were meant to be strict but not draconian to where she would carry it out. And that's really like what I'm going for with my no book buying, you know, like I want it to be strict, but I can't make it crazy, you know, like super strict, or else I'm just gonna bin that, and like if I can't buy any books at all, I'm not gonna carry on with that. And also she was saying about like giving gifts and stuff to people, and how like when she started not giving people stuff as presents but instead giving time, you know, she sort of felt like the gift meant more, you know. I sort of feel like that as well. Like I think when other people give me, you know, presents of their time, like things they've made, or like, you know, experiences, us going out, us doing stuff together, you know, instead of stuff. Like I like stuff, like don't get me wrong, but time as a present is just like, you know, is lovely. And she was also saying about like how she anthropomorphizes when you like give inanimate objects like personalities, like people. She like does that to stuff she's giving away. So she'd be like, goodbye bird plates. She'll like put them down and be like, it's not you, it's me, we just don't need you now. And I do that as well. Like when I'm throwing away shoes, I'm like, thank you shoes, you've been good shoes, and I'll just bin them. But I think overall this book, so it's a memoir, right? It's like essays about her life, her specific life, things that have happened to her and how she feels. And I'm into celeb memoirs, okay? I'm into them. I fully enjoy a celebrity memoir. But I'm like trying to get to the bottom of why it is that this book I felt, you know, was boring, or I like couldn't drive with it. I think I've nailed it. Celebrity memoirs for me are either fucking wild, okay? That person has had a fucking wild life. Like Carrie Fisher, her one, her life is nuts, okay? And that's why her memoir was super interesting. Or it's just hilarious, fucking hilarious. Like Jonathan Van Ness, like his memoir, like the way he like writes things and the way he like speaks and describes things. I was laughing out loud that whole time. Or it's just super relatable. Like I feel like the Seth Rogen one, like he was talking about sort of growing up, like in the same time that I was sort of growing up. He's about my age. He was talking about like going to Europe and like having all the same experiences as me. Like he was basically telling loads of parts of my life story, but in a way better way than I could ever tell it, you know, like that sort of thing. And this book like wasn't any of those things. Like it was funny-ish, but it wasn't laugh out loud hilarious. Like it wasn't really relatable in any way other than like the no buy year. Like she's quite a bit older than me. She's quite religious. She's a morning person. She doesn't have kids. You know, like all the things that she's going on and on about, like, you know, it has a lot to say about. Like I'm like 100% can't relate, mate. No, I can't. And it was just like her talking for ages about how her husband like flies a plane. Like no, can't relate. Like, and this is also a very boring story. Like I'm tired of it now. But like other than that, I would say this book is really good. I think Patchett writes really well, and I think she's probably a really lovely person, like really genuine and kind. But yeah, I'm giving it 3 stars just sort of based on my own experience. Like, so I'm moving on now to something that just came in from the library. Weiwei's book, 1000 Years of Joys and Sorrows. So I initially saw this a couple times. Like I saw it in Costco, I saw it in Barnes & Noble. I always like gave it a flick. You know, I always sort of get to the photos, and I'm always really interested in the photos, and I have a look at the photos. And then pass it up because it doesn't really speak to me. However, I've been looking more into it, thinking more about it, okay? And I think that I'm excited about this now. I think I'm down. I think I'm into it. It's about Ai Weiwei. So he's a Chinese artist and dissident, like political dissident. It just sort of, I think, says about his life. It's his memoir. It's about him, like, telling his life through art, I think. It's generally the idea. And I think I'm for that. I think I'm for it. I have sort of had, like, a bit of a thought, just recently, that I think this book might be good. So, do I want to read it right now? Or do I want to read one of the other 2 books I've left? So I've read 3. I have 3 left. Do I want to read this one right now? Or do I want to read one of the other 2 that I'm pretty sure I'm not going to like? You know, so it was a good pattern so far. Like, read one I liked, read one I didn't like. Read one I liked, you know. should I continue with the pattern? Like read one I know I'm not gonna like, and then read this one which I think maybe I will like now, and then another one I don't like, you know? Or should I just get to the pudding, first of all, get to the dessert, and then leave the other two? Like, I don't know, I'm gonna have to have like a deep conversation with myself. Yeah, fuck it. Yeah, I'm gonna read this one now. Like, we'll burn that bridge of like having two left that I'm gonna hate when we get to that, okay? Okay, I have finished Ai Weiwei's 1000 Years of Joys and Sorrows. And because it wasn't literally the worst book I've ever read in my life, I'm gonna give it a satisfactory 2 stars. Like, I can't even bring myself to, like, come to this project with a forced optimism anymore. Like, there's no amount of seeing it differently. It's just shit. And I think I just need to push my way through to the end and just be done and put it behind me. Like, this book, it wasn't bad, okay? But it was very, like, dry. Very boring and dry and quite clinical, I think, in his description of how the Chinese government has treated him and his family. And I, you know, understand the merit of it and the importance of reading this sort of thing, you know, especially as, you know, China and the West are trying to sort of like decide how they're going to feel about each other, you know, for the next couple of years. Like, are we going to hate each other? Are we going to have a war? Blah, blah, blah. Like, it's important to know, you know, who the other side is, you know, what they're being accused of and blah, blah, blah. So, you know, it's enlightening in that way. Like, he did have some really interesting things to say about, like, the way both he and his father were treated, both as dissidents, like 50, 60, 70 years apart from each other. Do you know what I mean? Like, 2 different regimes in China, both, you know, dissidents of those regimes. The dad was sent to like this camp or whatever in Siberia and had to take his family, and Ai Weiwei as a child had to like make his own stove. You know what I mean? Like, because he wasn't given a stove, and it was like a dirt floor and everything. And then he was like put into this sort of like forced imprisonment type thing and like question for months. And that was quite interesting as well, to sort of like see the different sort of things they're able to make secret. Do you know what I mean? They're able just to not bring you a lawyer. Do you know what I mean? They're able just to pretend like you don't exist to the rest of the world and just keep you in a sort of dungeon situation for ages. And like, they had a doctor come in to make sure that, you know, even though he was sleep deprived, that his blood sugar was, you know, good to go for another round of sleep deprivation and stuff like that. And that's, you know, hard to hear and also good to know, you know. Like, also he was saying the guards in that situation, like, they were quite young, and also they'd sort of been forced really to join the military due to, you know, poverty and like lack of opportunity and stuff like that. So they quite liked him, you know. They could like chat with him and like have real chat with him. Like, he did like sex ed sessions with them, you know, like teaching them about like the good book, you know, sex and stuff like that. Anyway, I did enjoy that. And also I like that his ultimate reason for writing this book is that because his father was a dissident and everything, and he feels like he didn't really get the full story from his dad before he died. He wasn't able to sort of get like the full reckoning in a full relationship. So he's written this now for his son, so that his son won't feel that way. Like, he'll have a full reckoning and like a full account of everything in a book. However, it was, yeah, just really clinical and dry. Like, and then on the 4th of August, they took me downstairs and questioned me for 6.2 hours, at which point I asked for my lawyer and was told, like, you know, like, you know, if so the point of the book is not to, you know, get a mass audience for his situation and his cause and stuff like that. Like, I understand that. But it's good because you're not going to get anyone to read this book who's like me and, you know, feels like very impassioned, like emotional, and needs like emotional things and gorgeous things and beauty and blah, blah. Like, I'm not a human rights lawyer. I'm not an activist. I don't care like how many hours exactly it was that you've been in this dungeon or like on what date or blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, the fact that you felt scared is enough for me. So we could have cut out several of those pages. Anyway, I'm done ranting. It's obviously for some people. Some people be really into this. I, however, was not. So there's 2 books left, right? First one being Serhii Plokhy's history of the Cuban Missile Crisis, which in like, I have it in book form. I have it from the library and it looks quite thick. So I was like, okay, I'll just see if there was an audiobook, how long would it be? And I did find an audiobook online and it would be 14 hours. So that's, you know, that's an option. Also, the other option is one that it would only be 6 hours, you know, and I would have to get the audiobooks. I can't find it at the library. It would only be 6 hours. However, it's a medical memoir, which the very idea of makes me want to puke. I'm 100% uninterested in medical memoirs because hospitals, doctors, illness give me anxiety. Okay, I'm fully aware that at any situation, at any point, I could wake up and be paralyzed or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it sits on me. It's an anxiety. And I have no interest in reading about people who've gone through that, because the entire time I'm just going to think, like, I'm like, read about their symptom. I'd be like, oh, they're bloated, are they? Am I bloated? I think I'm also bloated, yeah. Do I have this illness? I better check, you know, like that. So the two that are left, like, I cannot abandon the project right now. I cannot do that. That is an asshole move. And I, despite hating these books, try at all costs not to be an asshole. So I can't drop out. I have to finish them. But the prospect of even starting either of these two books, like, it's fucking raining outside. It's raining as fuck. I've had a terrible day at work. I don't want to read these books. I would rather read several other books I don't want to read before I read these two books. But okay, I guess the short one it is then, just to knock another one out and then give myself, like, you know, a morale boost for having one left. And then take that morale forward to tackle this, like, 14-hour book. So, Sarah Ruhl's Smile. It is. That's the next one for me on the list. Medical memoir. Okay, so I have finished Smile by Sarah Ruhl. And to be fair, okay, so it's this medical memoir, right? It's about, she had a really risky pregnancy, and then immediately after that she had Bell's palsy, which is like paralysis on the side of the face, which may or may not be permanent. She also had like celiac disease and also like Hashi something that I forget. Basically, you know, through the whole thing, she was, you know, witty, sharp, you know, like introspective, genuine. You know, I feel like as a person, she would just be a really lovely person, you know, and like a fun mum friend as well, because she was quite down to earth about, like, you know, being a mum and stuff. As a person, I reckon she'd be delightful. However, I feel like for me personally, the experience of reading about the trials and tribulations of all of her maladies was traumatizing for me. Oh my god. Like, you know, all of these things that she said she has, as she's talking about the symptoms and she's talking about blah, 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 I'm Googling them. I'm looking them up to make sure I don't have that. And I'm still not 100% sure I don't have those things. You know what I mean? Like, and is also, I think, actually triggered, like, more COVID anxiety for me today. Because, like, we're looking to hopefully go away for Anwan's birthday for half term, like, next week. And we have to not have COVID when we get on the plane. And now I just feel like, okay, so yeah, we did get a message from the school saying someone in the class had COVID, you know, which isn't really a big deal. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean she'll get it. But that and this book, like, I'm so anxious. Like, it's spiked now. It's like spiked my anxiety. And I'm pretty sure it's not just this thing from the school, that I would have been able to handle it in a normal way, you know, if I wasn't already super anxious from this book. So, you know, medical memoirs are not for me, especially because I don't know this person. You know, like when you read about famous people in shows you like or movies you like, or, you know, authors you love or whatever, it like brings like a personalness to it. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, I remember when she did that movie. That's weird that she was going through that at the time. But I don't know this person. Also, you know, I just can't. This vlog, this Booktube Prize vlog, has gone from, like, you know, an optimistic experiment to just an absolute trash fire. And I apologize for that. And it's not even over. It's not even over. I now have this book left. This is my last one. it's the next one to go. And the audiobook of it, like I'm not getting the audiobook because I have this goddamn book here. It's 14 hours. What are the pictures like? Like maybe the pictures will cheer me up because I do quite like a good picture section. Fidel Castro, that's quite obvious. Kennedy, okay. Khrushchev. No. This is a bunch of like old white men in military suits. That's not triggering any interest for me at all whatsoever. So that one's next. I think I might just go have wine and cry. Like, oh, I'm not in a good place. I'm not in a good place. But it's cool. Wine will help. I haven't finished it yet. I'm only on chapter 3. I just wanted you to see the look of anguish on my face. Okay, I have finished it. I've just finished Serhii Plokhy's Nuclear Folly, A New History of the Cuban Missile Crisis. And to be fair, I only got to here in the book before I just got the audiobook because I just couldn't cope anymore. That was taking way too much time and it was too awful. So I just bought the audiobook and like listened to it while doing laundry and stuff like that. Like that's the only way you can get through like something like that. We have absolutely zero interest. And they're talking about the different kinds of missiles, you know, the so-and-so 49 sort of missile, but the so-and-so 62 missile, blah, 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 like, and like different guys all with seemingly the same sort of name. And it was just, basically, this was clearly well researched. And some of it was interesting, okay? So like, I didn't know, so, you know, you've got this stuff about, the Russian state meddling in American elections sort of recently and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, it was interesting to see that it is not new, okay? Like, they've been doing it for a really long time. Probably vice versa as well. But that was really interesting. Also, to sort of, like, they're breaking down how it happened, how it sort of spiraled into this crisis that could be, like, World War III. And it's, in, like, neither side actually wanted there to be war, you know? It just sort of, like, one thing went forward and they expected so-and-so to do this, but then they didn't do that and it pushed them forward, you know, and then that person was like, still don't want war, so I'm just going to do this thing. But then, you know, I expected this guy to react in this way and he didn't, and that pushed it forward, you know, and so they're sort of both barreling toward this horrendous outcome that neither of them actually want. It just sort of pushed and pushed and pushed. Also, it was hilarious, they were on about how the missiles got onto the island. And the Russians were like, oh yeah, we'll just hide it behind trees. And people were like, you can't hide it behind palm trees. They're palm trees. Like, they don't have any, like, leaves or anything. It's just at the top, like a bit of hair. But still, they did it. And they did hide it behind trees. And Americans didn't see it for ages, even though they're obsessed with watching Cuba. So, fail. That was a fail. So, there were a couple of interesting things in here. I won't lie to you. And I might say recommend this to my dad. Maybe. Because he's the sort of guy would really appreciate like a breakdown of military things, you know what I mean? Like, it happened a bit before he was born, you know, so he didn't live through it. It might be interesting for him to, I don't know, he might be the kind of guy that would like this. I'll say to him, it's well researched and interesting, if he's interested, do you know what I mean? But for me personally, this was 100% a 1-star read, because no interest whatever in the bit by bit breakdown of the Cuban Missile Crisis. I'm not saying that I would be completely against reading something like that, but it would have to be less about different kinds of missiles and more about so-and-so felt that brinkmanship would affect us. Like, it needs to be like, you know, I don't know, like more of a story and like people and like, you know, I don't know. Anyway, I'm so glad to be done with it. I can't even tell you. Like, I'm going out right now. Like, I need to go right now. But I just finished the audiobook just then while like putting my makeup on, getting ready to go. So, looking at my stats, right, my stats for the Booktube prize, that puts number 1, okay, my number 1 thing that I'm going to push through in the top spot for the Booktube prize is Islands of Abandonment, okay, and then next is These Precious Days by Anne Patchett, and then next is 1,000 Years of Joys and Sorrows by Ai Weiwei, and then the last 3, they all got 1 stars from me, and I don't know which one I hated more. So I think probably I'll put Smile next, because even though it was awful, she did seem like a really lovely sort of person, and I understand that it's just me having like problems with medical memoirs, so I'll put her next, and then Everybody I'll put after that, just because I think actually Nuclear Folly, I did hate that more than all of the other ones. So everybody then would be just above that. Okay, Islands of Abandonment, These Precious Days, 1,000 Years of Joys and Sorrows, Smile, Everybody, Nuclear Folly. That's the lineup I'm sending through. Like I don't have enough time to like have like a whole sort of rant about this, but like, is this why, you know, the books that go through, like oftentimes the winner of it or whatever is someone, like everyone's like, you know, do we like that book? Like, oh, some people liked it, but it wasn't for me, blah, blah. Like, is it because so many of us are forced to read a bunch of books we hate and then push some of them forward? You know, like, you're the winner, even though I hated it. You know, like that, is that why it's all like a bit wonky and messed up? Like, is this a correct process for doing this? Like, I don't know. Actually, I'll have to come back to this. I'll talk to you about this tomorrow. I've gotta go. Okay, fast forward. It's the 1st of April. And they've just announced which books are moving forward from this round into the next round, right? And it's 3 books for every category of 6. The books moving forward in my category are Islands of Abandonment, which I feel was predictable because it's the only good one in the group. But then also, because 2 more have to come through, Smile and Nuclear Folly, which were my least ranked ones. Part of me is having a hard time getting my head around Nuclear Folly going through, but you know, that just tells me a bit about like who is voting, okay? Is it a lot of people exactly like my dad? Not that that's bad, okay? But, you know, I didn't realize that there were that many clones of my dad doing the Booktube prize. Not saying that in a bitter way, you know, just an observation. Okay, after my relatively disastrous introduction to the Booktube prize, you wouldn't be, you know, wrong in assuming that I've hung up my spurs for this one. I'm out. I'm done with the Booktube prize. My journey ends here. But no, I have decided to do the next round. I don't know why. Don't ask me. It's a sickness. I don't know why. My new books are you ready? Bewilderment by Richard Powers, The Book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki, The Love Songs of W.E.B. DuBois by Honoree Fanonne Jeffers, The Sentence by Louise Erdrich, The Magician by Colm Toibin, and What Strange Paradise by Omar Akkad. Okay, I'm not hating the sound of this matchup. Maybe I just fit better into a fiction category. Do you know what I mean? Maybe I just need to be honest with myself about that and understand that this is where I belong and that my forays into the non-fiction category did not go well. If you have gotten this far, I realized last time I was like, they're not going to be that long from here on out. And then obviously this is the longest one I think I've ever done. I forgot that the next video that I posted would actually be the Booktube prize one, and it is quite long. I apologize. I really mean it that the next ones that I do will be shorter. The next videos will be shorter. But if you did get this far with this one, thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts 100%. Even if they have like, you know, complete opposite of mine, please let me know. You know, it's important to know these things. If you did the Booktube prize, did you enjoy the ones that you had? Were you shocked of the ones that went through or not? You know, lay it on me. Let me know, and I will see you next week.